Hi, everyone. Let's talk about going from pet to threat in the workplace, which unfortunately is so common as Black women at work. I just want to give flowers before we start to the amazing Black women researchers, Dr. Kecia Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps, Dr. Juanita Johnson-Bailey, who coined this term, who compiled this research after analyzing so many of our experiences at work and really gave so many of us words for what we have encountered in the workplace to let us know it's not us, to alleviate some of that shame that we might have been carrying, some of that blame that we might have internalized that something is wrong with us. We start picking ourselves apart from the inside, being able to really externalize what's happening to us. Because, as I said, unfortunately, this is a pattern that happens to so many of us as Black women at work. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Thank you so much for joining. If you're new here, my name is Marissa Price. I am a liberatory healer. What am I? I'm an advocate, economic equity advocate, social worker. I do a lot of things. I'm a digital business strategist. Also the co-founder of the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black Women coming up online, May 1st through the 3rd. And we have 28 incredible, amazing Black women thought leaders who are coming to bring their knowledge, expertise to really help us build a strategy during this time where we see 400,000 plus. I did an interview with one of our speakers, Kamisha, last week, and she said over 800,000 she had seen, right? And so we are experiencing the effects of being pushed out of the workforce, right? Out of jobs that we were told were supposed to be stable. They were supposed to be in place, right? If we followed the steps, right? If we did the checklist, we were supposed to be okay. We're seeing that that's not the case because the checklist changes, right? As so many of us have experienced. And so if you have gone from pet to threat in the workplace and you feel comfortable sharing, please let us know. This was my experience in a toxic job, not having any understanding of what was happening to me. As I was excelling, right? On the thumbnail, I put like, we're being punished for excelling, right? That's really confusing. That really doesn't make sense because we're taught to get all these things. We're taught to get the certifications, we're taught to get the degrees, all these things that we're told will kind of like shield us, right? That's the message that I receive so often. And it actually made the treatment worse. And so that like level of disorientation that we experience when we've poured so much of ourselves into our education, into these roles, and then to have someone become infuriated, irritated by our brilliance, our light, the target on our back gets bigger. How do we move forward after that? How do we rebuild our self confidence? Because this can take a hit, right, to your confidence, to your perception of yourself, especially if you've tied your identity to what you do and what you achieve, which is the case. We've been socialized to do this so often, right? As Black girls, as Black women, to tie these things to our identity. So what happens when someone puts a target on our back, right? Sees us as a threat for excelling, for being brilliant, for saying our opinions, right? All these things can do a number on our self-esteem. And so how do we recover from that trauma? Because it is trauma. So if you're here live, thank you so much for joining me. If you feel comfortable, say hello in the chat so we can say hello back. But yes, as I said, I'll be co-hosting the 2026 Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black Women, the 3rd annual. So this is our 3rd year. I co-founded it with Dr. Kamani. Both of us are toxic job survivors. And please check out Dr. Kamani's channel if you haven't already. Lifting as We Climb Consulting on YouTube. She also does so many great posts on LinkedIn as well. But both of us really like coming together, being brought together, right? As I feel at this point, to share our experiences openly, to create a space that is confidential so no attendees will be on camera at the summit, as we both recognize the level of surveillance that exists in these job environments, right? People trying to spy on you, see what you're doing, right? And so no attendees will be on camera. You can also change your name within the summit platform to give yourself more comfort, more privacy. And that is always our top concern in hosting the summit, right? So let's get into the topic. right? And so this workplace shift that a lot of us experience, again, going from pet to threat, coined by three Black women researchers, Dr. Kecia Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps, Dr. Juanita Johnson-Bailey, who will be panelists as well on the kickoff day of the summit, May 1st, right? It's confusing, it's disorienting. So at first you're praised, you're brought in for your talents, for your expertise, for your skill set, right? You're celebrated, you're supported. Everyone wants you on their panel discussion, right? Everyone wants you on their sometimes like promotional materials, which I've experienced, right? And then something changes, right? The tone changes. The shift happens, right? And it can be gradual, it can be over time, or it can be sudden when you state your opinion, right? When you shine, right? A lot of us are just, I don't want to say like brilliant, right? We're brilliant. And that triggers a lot of people. The knowledge that we bring in, the expertise, the skill set, the confidence, the self-assuredness, right? That triggers people. And to understand this, I've had to go back to the dynamics of a plantation system, right? To really understand this, why this occurs, why this is so many of our experiences globally, right? When someone shines, when someone stands out, right? That triggers people who are trying to keep an oppressive dynamic in place, right? You're unsettling the system. And so the mistreatment is going to be directed towards you. You have to get out of the system because you're upsetting the order. And this can be helpful to understand so that you can start to externalize what you're experiencing, right? Something I want to say so often throughout this like live. It's not you. The problem is not you, right? You are brilliant. You have put all this work into your education, into your career, right? And we know it's not easy. All the different barriers that exist, experiencing intersectional oppression, right, as Black women, to get to these positions and then have someone threatened by your energy, right, by your confidence, by your skill set, by your education. It's disorienting, right? And I'm so glad that so many of us are talking about this openly because it happens to so many of us, right? Even like co-founding this summit and hearing the feedback that we've received from Black women globally, it is a pattern, right? It goes from right phase to phase, which I'm going to talk about in a second, to the point where we're left, right, trying to cobble together the pieces, what it feels like, of our identities. Who am I now? After I experienced this, that was supposed to be in place. It was supposed to be set, right? After I got the degree, after I got the certification, that's what everyone told me to do. So why am I at this point where people are trying to undermine me, right? Trying to underpay me, trying to make it feel like I am the problem for being brilliant, for being intelligent, for stating the obvious. And so just to recognize that the problem is not you, the problem is the oppressive systems that we're in. Right? And our brilliance is challenging the oppressive systems, the messages that we get, that we're inferior, that we're beneath. Right? And so the same traits that once made you valuable became framed as, right, you're doing too much. Now you're being threatening. Now you're not being a team player, right? Now you need to quiet down, right, and get on the same agenda as everyone else because someone is threatened by your brilliance. Someone is threatened by your intelligence, your ability to see through, right, what they're trying to present to you. This is the pattern from pet to threat, again, coined by three incredible Black women researchers who will be panelists on the kickoff day of the upcoming Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black Women, which I will put in the chat here if you would like to register. Again, it is all online. And you can also change your name within the Summit platform, and no attendees will be on camera. And so there is the link to register, also scrolling on the screen as well. But personally, I am really, really excited for this panel discussion. The fact that we, Dr. Kamani and I, were able to secure all 3 researchers who are incredible, right? Who are the top of their fields, to come in and really share what is our common experience often in the workplace. Why does this happen to so many of us? Right? And it makes it feel like something is wrong with you, right? Which is the goal. It has to be said that's the goal. To make you feel like you're doing something wrong, to make you feel like you're inadequate, when really it's the opposite, right? And something I've had to learn in analyzing oppressive systems, it's often the opposite. So you're brilliant, so they're going to say that there's something wrong with you, right? You're intelligent, so they're going to say you're not doing this correctly. The goal is to disorient you so that your confidence is weakened, so that the skills that you came in with, now you're questioning them. Now you're doubting them, right? The goal is to honestly, like psychologically break you, right? And the more of us who are honest, right? And it takes some time to get to that point where you're able to process, put the pieces together, share if you feel comfortable. But we're starting to see the through lines, right? This isn't just me. This happened to this brilliant Black woman, this brilliant Black woman, like over and over and over again, right? It has to be said, like, especially as Black girls, we are taught to seek education, to seek certifications, right? This happened to me after getting my master's degree, where I experienced this, right? And so starting to question, is that the whole story? Once I get this, I also need to be prepared, right? That someone may be threatened by that same education that I was taught to get, that I worked so hard to achieve. Despite all the odds stacked against me, I still achieved the degree, and then I enter into the workplace, right? And now someone is threatened by that degree. That's the second part that we really need to be aware of, right? So that we don't internalize the shame because there's nothing wrong with us. The fact is, you're so brilliant. The system is trying to push you down, right? Trying to put you back in your place. And so even recognizing that, being able to externalize again, that's not me, that's the system, right? That's the system trying to tell me that something is wrong with me. That I'm speaking, right? I'm speaking too much, so let me quiet down. No, I'm actually going to push against that. And that's where your agency comes in, right? So a lot of anti-oppression work is leaning into your agency. Do I have to take this in? Right? Can I vet this before I let this into my being? That this person was trying to criticize me, right? And could this be a tactic of trying to keep me in my place because I'm shining too brightly, versus, right, the internalizing of shame, right? This person said I'm doing too much. Now I need to quiet my voice, right? Now I need to read the email over and over and over again before I send it. Creating conditions, as I've talked about on my channel before, right? OCD. How do these behaviors start? Within oppressive systems where we're told to look over our things 10, 20 times, right? And it's a lie at the root of it, right? And so just to acknowledge that, remember that it's a lie. And to not use your energy that is precious, right? To try to push back against what was always a lie, because there was nothing wrong with you, ever. So it's the shift, right, from pet to threat of being accepted or favored or praised or receiving validation. Again, we are socialized as girls, particularly as Black girls, to seek external validation. And so that transforms, right, into now you're being a problem. Once your competence, once your skill set, once your confidence, your voice, your independence becomes undeniable, right? Your light is shining so brightly. People are getting irritated, right? Because they don't have that, right? And they want it. Well, this is bringing up the movie Sinners for some reason. Shout out to Michael B. Jordan for his win last night. But we see the dynamics that exist if you've seen that movie, right? Your life force is often what is wanted. And it is that deep and it is that cruel. And so just to acknowledge that. Hello, Sobriety Shame. Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining. Hello. Right. And so what from pet to threat means, coined by three incredible Black women researchers, Dr. Kecia Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps, Dr. Juanita Johnson-Bailey, studying workplace dynamics affecting Black women. And so the pattern often unfolds in stages, right? So the pet stage, you might be praised, you might be welcomed in. This was the case for me. How many of us have experienced this? Being asked to do this job because your skill set aligns perfectly with this role, right? We're seeking you out in particular for what you can bring to this role, right? When these things benefit other people and they still feel like you're in your place, right? That's the pet stage. The shift starts, right, when you start exercising your autonomy, your independence, your voice, right? You become visible. Your influence increases. Other people are starting to recognize how much brilliance you're bringing to every room that you walk in. So that's the shift, right? As long as you're in your place and I can control you, I can praise you and I can welcome you in, right? And it also looks good for the organization. But the minute you start exercising your autonomy, your agency as a human being, not a pet, a human being, right? That's the shift that occurs. And then the threat stage, right? The environment becomes uncomfortable with your power, with your light, right? We start to experience some of the consequences physically in our bodies when this shift happens, right? So we start shrinking, right? We feel the warmth in our chest, which is why that I've made this transition into somatic healing. How do we heal our bodies from what we've experienced? Because so much of that trauma lives within us. Shrinking your voice, right? People, again, try to turn that narrative around. You're doing too much. You're speaking up too much. You're being, right? You're raising this issue too often. You're making other people uncomfortable. You're not being a team player. You're not being a team player, right? All these lines that are like rinse and repeat over and over again that so many of us have heard, right? The issue is not about your performance. The issue is not you, right? It's the system not being able to tolerate your power and the people who uphold that system. You're challenging the status quo, right? You're challenging the oppressive system that's been in place that keeps people in their positions. And so even to recognize that the issue is not you. The issue is the oppressive system. But you can see like really the benefit of having this knowledge, research, this term to be able to attach to our experiences. Right? Oh, it's not me. I'm experiencing going from pet to threat, as so many Black women globally have experienced. Right? Because again, these systems like to dehumanize us. And so what happens when we exercise our full autonomy, our full agency, as we're often brought in to do, which is the confusing part in these roles? Right? People get uncomfortable. People get cruel. Right? Because you are challenging oppressive systems, right? With the message that we're inferior, right? How could we be inferior if your brilliance is lighting up the room? If your knowledge is something that people are seeking out? Do you see how it's challenging these messages that we receive that are lies? Hey, Jamila. Yes, your life force and your intellectual property. Yes, thank you for that. Your intellectual property. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And so if you're here watching live, thank you so much for joining us. We are talking about the trauma of going from pet to threat. As Black women at work, right? Something I've talked about often, something that unfortunately so many of us have experienced. And we're so lucky to have the 3 Black women researchers who coined this term, who did the research with us on the opening day of the summit, May 1st. If you're not registered, this is going to be an event to remember, right? That we really need during this time. As someone who has been planning this, right, and trying to put all the pieces together, this is life-changing, right? This lineup over the past 3 years, absolutely, but in particular this year, given the conditions that we're facing. Again, reading some places that over 800,000 Black women have been forced out of the workplace, right? Over the past year and a few months. It's a lot. It's a lot that we're experiencing. And so being able to bring together researchers, coaches, psychologists, right? Strategists, income strategists, right? So it's the problem, like recognizing the problem that we're facing is so important. And then what are the solutions? And we have both with the summit, right? So understanding, recognizing, getting to the root of why we go from pet to threat, and then what can we do about it? How can we build communities? How can we build our strategies for pivoting into another job that actually values us, right? Pivoting to entrepreneurship, help. We have a session that Mercedes will be leading on if you're deciding between the two, right? Do I need to make a career pivot or do I want to pursue entrepreneurship? You can also do entrepreneurship part-time just to get an idea of what it feels like, right? And so we have so many practical, tangible sessions this year in particular that I think really speak to the moment that we're in. How do we make a strategy when there's so much uncertainty, right? We pull from the legacy of what Black women activists have been doing for centuries. Coming together, sharing our knowledge, sharing our resources, making a strategy to move forward, right? When it feels like the world is going to end. How do we bring together what we know to be true through our expertise, through our knowledge, through our lived experience, to say that's not going to be the case for me, right? I'm actually coming together in this safe, confidential community to build something that's going to benefit me, my family, my community, and I'm going to share, right? That's really the purpose of the summit too, to share what we all have learned throughout this process, right? Me experiencing this 3 years ago at this point, completely disoriented, right? What was happening to me? I had no idea until I came across Dr. Kamani's, who's now my Summit co-founder's channel on YouTube. And she was doing a video on from pet to threat. And I had no idea what that term meant, right? And then going down the rabbit hole, understanding, oh, this is what is happening to me. Being able to externalize that. Seeing other Black women in the comments saying this same thing is happening to me, and me, and me. And just understanding, wow, right? It really is not individually anything that we're doing. We're challenging the system with our brilliance, and the system's trying to keep us in place. Thank you so much. I appreciate this. Thank you, Anita. You are so welcome. I appreciate this. Jamila says, and also to Marissa, yes, obvious pet to threat things happening, but the ambiguous pet to threat actions are even worse, because then you start to think you're the crazy one. Thank you for this. Yep. That is true. The covert. Oof. The covert. Yes. Right. And so you have the overt signs where you're able to label them clearly. Okay, this person did this. Got it. But what about the things that are underneath the surface that you can't necessarily put a label to, but you feel it, right? The energy directed towards you, the talking over you in meetings, the questioning your skill set, right? With little side comments. That's the covert, right? And that's really the way that a lot of these things function now. It has to be kind of underneath the surface, which can be harder to identify, which I think is the benefit of having other Black women share, oh, this happened to me, right? It was under the surface, but now I'm able to see, oh, that happened to her too. So it's not just me. Which again is why they don't, like all these spaces that we're building for community to strategize during these times. We're seeing funding being cut, right? And that could be a whole other topic, but this is on purpose. Because what happens when we're able to come together to share? This is happening to me too. You start to see a pattern forming. We start to be able to externalize what we're experiencing and then rebuild our self-confidence and self-esteem. And understand that this whole thing was a twisted, warped mind game the entire time. Right? That is the power of being in safe community. And the purpose of the summit, right? Really to bring together so many incredible strategists, leaders during this time, right? When they're making us feel like this is all there will ever be. No, right? We've proven this time and time and time again. No, it's not. Which session will help me pivot to a job that values me? My goal, if I attend the summit, is to be intentional about the sessions that I need. My anxiety is heightened these days. I'm worried. Thank you for sharing this. Ooh, there are a number of sessions. The session with Mercedes, I think, would be helpful. So Entrepreneurship or Career Pivot by Mercedes Swan. She's a career coach. And that is on Sunday. Yes, May 3rd. Trying to think through all the sessions. I think Charnay Hortons, who is the founder of the Resume Addict. She'll be speaking on Saturday, May 2nd, about revising your resume to plan your pivot. I think could be helpful as well. Even a sound bowl, that's coming to me too. We have Dr. Danette King coming in to do a sound bowl meditation on the Friday of the summit to help us, as you said, with the worry, with the anxiety, right? Before we even get into the content, the strategizing, the income strategies, can we come together to kind of bring peace to our nervous systems, right? To even be able to ingest this information that we're about to receive. So I think that could be helpful too. I think Adalia's session could be really powerful. Adalia Borshade of Piggy Girl Travels the World will be doing a session on Know Your Numbers Before You Pivot on Sunday, May 3rd. That could be helpful. There are a number of sessions. If you're interested in pursuing a new career, right? Pivoting from your career, making your strategy. And it has to be said, all of this is on your timeline. So there is no pressure, right? This took me a year and a half, 2 years to execute the strategy that I was building. And so no one can tell you that it has to be on this time because that's individual for every single person. The purpose is to give you information to plan, right? To build a strategy, to see that there are options outside if you're in a toxic work environment or if you're fearful about being laid off, to provide you with information from all of our speakers that there is a plan, right? That there are ways for you to pivot to. Sometimes it can feel like there's just a cliff, right? And so once this thing happens, I'm going to fall off the cliff. No, right? It's a net that we're trying to provide attendees with, right? Based on all of our experiences, our knowledge, our expertise. Many of us have been through this. And so I think that, right, that's really powerful. It's not just coming from me as a practitioner, a healing practitioner, right? Liberation Lives in the Body is my session on Sunday, May 3rd. But this is actually my personal experience of, again, dealing with insomnia from a toxic job, the rumination, right? The chest tightness, the headaches, the migraines, the jaw pains, all these things that happen when we're in toxic spaces. How can we return to our bodies as a safe place after experiencing that level of trauma? That's what we'll be talking about, right? Liberation lives in the body. And I think, Jamila, to your question, Kamisha Jones-Brandon of Sister Afia Wellness, Community Wellness in Chicago, will be doing a session on burnout that I think might be helpful too, right? And so how do you process if you're already experiencing burnout? How do you find healing, peace after that traumatic experience? Because burnout is traumatic. And then how do you plan for a potential like relapse, right? Into these patterns of pushing your body past the point of exhaustion, coming back to center, right? Realizing that all of this information that we're gaining, it's going to be, you're going to go a little bit out and come back in, right? Out and then in. That's a process of change. Knowing that change is not linear, right? Every time you come back to the place that you thought, right, that you were, you're actually a different person. So even though it may feel like I'm back at this place again, you have more knowledge, you have more understanding, you've been doing the practices, so you're not actually back at the same place. What you're doing is building a muscle, just like anything we have to do in life. So I hope that was helpful. Jamila says, I feel it and can't label it. This concerns me, my mental health. Thank you for this. And I do want to share, if you are in crisis, I always want to share this. There is a lifeline, right? Because again, these things that we experience in the workplace, they're not small, they're not insignificant. They have a huge impact on our mental health, our physical health, right? They're traumatic experiences. And so I do want to share this 988, right, which is the lifeline that you can call or text. There are various mental health resources, right? So Therapy for Black Girls is a really great resource. The Loveland Foundation is another one as well. We know that these times that we're in are purposely, intentionally creating mental strain, right? And so the issue is not you. Again, externalizing what you're experiencing, and do want to share resources, right, around mental health. Absolutely. Okay. And so how the pattern can show up in real life, right? So it could show up like being mentored, being championed early for your work, and then suddenly being described differently, right? Now you're being too difficult. Now you're being too assertive. Now you're intimidating other people. So people becoming uncomfortable maybe with your ideas, your leadership, your visibility, your influence within the organization. Now you're being excluded from decision making. You're being left out of meetings. You're having your work scrutinized more heavily, right? Performance improvement plans is a tactic that is often used in toxic workplaces against Black women, right? Put on a performance improvement plan, right? And one of our speakers, Anne-Marie Archer of the Anti-HR Lady on YouTube, she talks about this, right? So having a strategy in place before you even get to that point is so essential, right? Because behind the scenes, they already have a strategy. I think that's important to recognize. And so we have to meet that with our own strategy. A lot of times when we were experiencing trauma in these environments from these experiences, right? It can feel like you're kind of caught off guard, which is the intention, which is the purpose. But what if you had the information in place, right? Now I see that this could be a potential strategy that they're developing behind the scenes to push me out, to make it seem that I'm doing something wrong, right? To try to end my career, right? So how could I build a strategy to counter theirs? That's really how you have to look at a lot of these workplaces. Yeah. And I wish that someone had told me that right before I entered into this. And that's the purpose of the summit. How can you build a strategy in place that counters, right, the toxic strategy that's trying to push you out, trying to convince you that something is wrong with you by actually operating in your truth, in your brilliance, right, and meeting them, right? If you're going to have a strategy against me, then I'm going to have a strategy for myself that benefits me. Being labeled the problem when you advocate for yourself, right? So now you're the problem. Now something is wrong with you, right? You're advocating for yourself, which is your right, right? But we see how the narrative gets switched, which is a tenet of oppression, right? If I can turn the narrative, now you're trying to fight that you're doing too much, right? By shrinking, when the whole thing was a lie in the first place. And so even to begin to recognize that what we're operating in, why this is so important to have a strategy in place that protects you, right? Your wellness, as Anne Marie Archer talks about, your coins, right? Yeah, she helps Black women negotiate, right? That's the focus of her session, which will be our last session on Sunday, May 3rd. Don't just quit, negotiate. Leaning into our power, which is the theme of the summit this year. Preparation is power. How can you prepare for things that might come at you? Which again, knowing when we all share our experiences, there's a pattern that develops. That is the research, right? From pet to threat. That these three amazing Black women researchers have compiled. They've identified a pattern. And so if we know that there's a pattern, we can prepare for the next step before it happens. And so why this might happen, hey, Edna B. Lurkey. I always love this name. Thank you for joining. So why this might happen, right? Expectations of compliance. And so your brilliance is welcome just as long as it doesn't disrupt the hierarchy. The second it starts to disrupt that, now we have an issue, right? That's when the shift occurs. You're challenging the system, you're challenging the established hierarchy. Right now, you're going to start to be marginalized. Right? Because how people are viewing who are upkeeping the system, you're not complying. You're not complying with the role someone else has set out for you, but maybe you had no understanding of. People having comfort with your contributions, but not your power. So a lot of organizations may welcome in our labor, but resist our authority, right? So it's fine when you can contribute your labor, but don't try to make decisions, right? Or assume a position of authority, because then that shift is going to occur, right? That's what they're thinking. Which again is confusing because a lot of us are brought in to decision-making roles. So how am I not supposed to make a decision if that is part of my job description? And confusion is part of it, right? Disorientation is part of it. Visibility can shift dynamics, right? So when you become influential, your influence increases. Other people are seeking you out for your knowledge, your expertise on something. It can change the power dynamic that has been established, right? And now someone feels threatened by your presence. As long as I can keep you in your place, then it's all good, right? That's an issue because a lot of us, right, our brilliance just naturally, our brilliance, our expertise is going to shine through. There's no way that you can dim it. And so that spot that has been carved out for you that maybe you had no idea about, right? You're going to go beyond that just naturally. Stereotypes and bias, right? So our confidence, our self-assuredness can be interpreted differently through lenses based in misogynoir, right? The fear of Black women, right? Fear/hatred, fear often leading to hatred. Our confidence, self-assuredness, right? I have the education, I have the background. I see the gap, right? I see the issue that needs to be solved. I'm coming in with my problem solving skills that I've cultivated over time, right? And now the messages come because it's being filtered through that lens of misogynoir. You're doing too much. You're intimidating other people. And if we internalize these messages, right, that's the real harm. because then we start to change who we are. Then we start to pick ourselves apart, right? Then our self-esteem and our self-confidence becomes impacted, which carries on not just this job, the next job after that, right? If we enter into entrepreneurship, that now our entire life trajectory has been altered because I've internalized the messages that you gave me that were actually lies, that were trying to oppress me, trying to keep me in my place. Hey, Celeste, one of our amazing speakers. Thank you so much for joining us. Celeste will be talking about finding contract roles. If you are experiencing a layoff, if you're in a toxic work environment looking for more flexibility with contract roles, Celeste will be leading an amazing session, which I'm so excited about. How do you find contract roles? And that will be on Saturday, May 2nd. Again, here's a link to register for the summit, all online. No attendees on camera. You can change your name within the summit platform if you want to attend completely anonymously. 28 incredible, outstanding Black women thought leaders, generously providing their knowledge, lived experience often of how you build your strategy in times of uncertainty to protect yourself, your family, right? Your community. Again, because other folks have a strategy, as we see on full display, we have to build one, right, to counter. Before it gets to the point, and I've experienced this myself, the trauma gets so intense that it can be difficult to plan. And if you're in that place, know that I have been there, and that is also the purpose of the summit, right? To be in a safe place with other Black women where you're able to have this information, right? Have other people tell you that it's not you. Allow your nervous system to rest, right? And return to the information when you have that space to make your plan. There is no pressure. Both of us are healing practitioners, right? Mental health professionals, understanding the impact of trauma. So this is a trauma-informed space. There is no rush for you to do this on any timeline but yours. It has to be individual for it to be effective, because everyone's life situation is different. Thank you so much for this. It happened to me when I started getting personal recognition for my own work. Yes. Woof. Thank you for this, right? Recognizing when the shift occurred, right? This was the case for me too. Thank you, Celeste. Yep. When I started being recognized by other people for my work, right? Then all of a sudden the praise that I had been receiving, right, transitioned into something that felt really bad, right? To my nervous system, my body. Couldn't quite name it. Again, to Jamila's point about covert mistreatment. Couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it didn't feel good. That's all the information that I needed, right? I know this at this point. That is the proof. Right? And often we're asked for all this documentation, right? To label it, which we will be providing information on FMLA. Colette Elizabeth, one of our amazing speakers, will be speaking Sunday, May 3rd. If you're interested in taking a career break, right, using your benefits, using FMLA, which I did. I took 11 weeks off, which really helped me be able to heal my brain from the trauma that I experienced, which was intense in this workplace, to then have the mental space to make a plan. So if you're interested in how do you use FMLA, how do you use short-term disability to take a break, right? If you're still not ready to make your full exit from this job, you can use that, right? That benefit is yours to use. And so Colette will be walking us through, how do you do it? how do you do it, right? How do you do the paperwork, right? What are the different paperwork things that I need to fill out? Because it can be overwhelming, which again is intentional. It's part of it to make it feel like it's off limits and not something that you can access. But that's not true. Once you're in a space of, again, feeling safe enough to have the mental bandwidth, to have the information, right, at your pace, do the steps in this community which we are building, right? Hopefully some of that pressure that you might feel or that it feels inaccessible starts to melt away, because you're seeing that we have done it. And so the narrative that it's inaccessible, it's undoable, it's off limits to us, we're all proving that wrong. No. Right? It may take some time, but it's not undoable. If it's undoable, how have we all done it? And so really like pulling on the lived experience, the expertise that a lot of us have, I think is so important at this time. Hello, thank you for joining. OMG, yes, I hate working in office with other women. It's always, yes, competition or something, yes. I'd rather work remote. That is true, yeah. So to your point, yeah, the competition, the different dynamics that exist, right, in the workplace when you're in the office. I know there was a study that came out like when the pandemic happened and a lot of us shifted to remote work, how much it benefited Black women in particular to not have to go into the office, right? And I have ideas about the rollback of remote work because it did benefit us so much. It's exhausting. It really is. People think you're distant, unapproachable. Thank you for this. Thank you for being here. Yes. Distant, unapproachable. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And so the emotional and professional cost, right after the shift, there can be confusion. So asking ourselves, did something change, right? Did I do something different? Like you start to like overanalyze yourself, start to pick yourself apart from the inside. Right? The answer is no. What changed is how the system perceived your power. Right before, when you were new, maybe you were still learning the role, right? You were meeting people, right? And then all of a sudden, once you started to get that information, that understanding, you started exercising your brilliance. You started shining, right? And so nothing with like that you did necessarily, your behavior changed. Those things that have always been within you are still very much there. What changes how the system now perceives you, right? No longer are you in this place, this spot that someone has created for you. You're exercising your agency. Then you become a threat to the established system. That's the shift, right? So that it can be confusing. It can be disorienting, which is what I experienced, right? Causing things like anxiety, insomnia, depression. As I talked about at the start of this, right? As Black girls, we're often taught to seek education, right? I know I received that message a lot. And so then the confusion comes, right? Again, I said, like, after getting my master's degree, experiencing this phenomenon, and then asking, like, did something shift? Did something change? I thought that I was supposed to do all these things. That's what people have been telling me my whole life. right? No one prepared me. Oh, the system is now going to perceive you as a threat when you have this level of understanding, expertise, knowledge, understanding. And it's going to try to push you out. That's the part that I wasn't prepared for, right? And I think it's so important that we are able to share information so that more of us can be prepared, right? Again, the focus of the summit this year, preparation is power. What could change if we were actually prepared for what we are to expect when we do have this level of education? When we do, right, have this level of brilliance, as is inherent. Right? Being prepared for that shift that could likely occur. Hopefully it doesn't, but could likely occur, so that you don't internalize what is happening to you. You don't internalize the mistreatment. Now you understand this is a dynamic. This is a pattern that has been named. And so I can take that burden off myself for trying to change my behavior, right? Trying to shrink my voice. You may experience self-doubt, overanalyzing your behavior, your tone of voice, how you interact with people, overworking to prove yourself. This was the case for me, right? So going even harder. Dr. Kamani has talked a lot about this on her channel, Lifting as We Climb Consulting on YouTube, right? Overworking as a trauma response. So now I'm going to work even harder to try to prove, right, that I can do this. I am effective at my job. When the whole time it's a lie, right? So often in this dynamic, in this from pet to threat dynamic, being isolated, right? Because that's a tactic. Has to be said, that's a tactic of abusers, to isolate the person so that you feel like it's you. To create the dynamics, if someone else speaks out or up for you, they may be harmed too, so everyone is fearful. Again, you have to return to the roots, right? Where does this come from? The plantation system, so often. You might experience burnout, nervous system exhaustion, right? We're often told the solution is to work harder. Those of you who have followed my channel, right? I receive messages, and part of this like healing and ancestral reclamation has been heeding those messages. And one of the messages that came to me, you can't outwork oppression, right? You can't outwork oppression. But we're told that this is a solution. You need to work harder, right? Maybe you need to get another degree. How, like this degree created these conditions, right? It wasn't the degree, it was people's, how they perceived your knowledge, expertise. But we have to be honest that this actually made the target on my back even bigger. So is that solution, right? Not saying if you don't, like if you want another degree, please pursue it, right? Please do that. But it being presented to us as this is the solution, I think falls short, completely short. It overlooks, it erases, it diminishes our experiences when we do have all these things. And we're still experiencing harm. In fact, it might be getting worse. Because again, the system now is perceiving you as even more of a threat, and it's trying to push you out at an even more intense rate. And so the issue here is structural. It is systemic. It's not personal, right? It's not a personal failing or something that you can change about yourself. It's structural. And I hope that that alleviates some of the, if you have internalized, if this has happened to you too, right? That it's not an individual issue. How could it be individual, right? If these incredible Black women researchers, Dr. Kecia Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps, Dr. Juanita Johnson-Bailey, have compiled our experiences from the workplace and named an entire pattern called from pet to threat. It's not individual. Get to the comments, y'all. Let me see. Yeah, Celeste says, I didn't know the name of the phenomenon at the time, but a Black male coworker literally said to me that our manager tends to have a problem with competent Black women, why she kept hiring us. IDK, thank you for this. I tell you that. Thank you, Celeste. Ooh, that is my experience. Into the last part of your comment, why she kept hiring us. Right. And so I've and just hearing our experiences over the past over 3 years at this point, it is I think it's an intentional method, maybe, of psychologically breaking us, like attempted, right? To break us psychologically. Like I do fully believe that. And I think it brings some people joy, honestly, which is another level of cruelty that I can't even begin to really understand. But that is what's ringing true, right? It brings people a sense of fulfillment when they can break other people. And so even recognizing that that's what we're in, that is what we're encountering. It's so essential to have a strategy, right? To counter that level of cruelty that so many of us have been subjected to and have taken on, right? Something's wrong with me. Again, I gotta silence my voice. I have to shrink. I have to interact differently. I have to read this email. And the reason I say that is because this is what I did, right? I have to read this email now 20 times, 30 times before I send it. Because I'm gonna get this right. Those of us who are high achievers, right? It can make us really, what's the word? Uncomfortable, maybe, right? When we can't get something right. And that has been so healing for me, having to release that. It's never anything I could have got right. Because just me, right, being in my body, sharing my opinion, doing my job responsibilities, the system determined that that was wrong. So there is no getting it right. So that can be freeing as well, right? To again see this as a systemic, structural issue that we are encountering, not a personal failing. Yeah, she's amazing. Yes, Anne-Marie Archer will be our last speaker of the summit, Sunday, May 3rd. For her session, Don't Just Quit, Negotiate. If you are interested in learning how to potentially negotiate before you leave, right? If you're experiencing something like that, her session, as always, she's been our speaker for the past 2 summits too. But I always look forward to her sessions because they're real, right? They're practical. And she tells the truth, right? Anne-Marie Archer really, she tells the truth in such a way that really resonates. with us and so many of our attendees. So yes, I'm looking forward to her session. Yes, thank you for this. Yeah. Also, being obese is an issue or disabled Black woman. Yes. Thank you for saying this. So intersectionality has to be named. Mm-hmm. And I did a video on this, right, of intersectionality, where the different identities that we hold fall within the power structure that we're in, and how this can lead to even more intense discrimination, right? More intense mistreatment, depending on where your identities fall. I think it's called the power wheel of oppression. I think that's what it's called, but that could be very helpful, right? If you're interested in learning more about this topic. So many different things, right? Mm-hmm. They're just coming up, right? Ageism, as you said, disability, right? Body size. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Yeah. Thanks for posting. You're welcome. I just discussed the covert shade and hate that is done. Thank you. Thank you for this. You're welcome. Yeah, the covert. Yeah, the covert mistreatment is something that's really difficult to identify. And that's intentional, right? I think the term is plausible deniability, right? And so if I can mistreat you, but if I can just not name it, not do it overtly, but still mistreat you, right? You're not going to be able to necessarily have the data, the information to name it. And that's why, like, the work I do around heeding our body signals. How did this feel to your body? And let that be the proof. Even if it's not overt, right? Even if, right, you can't necessarily put it on paper and show someone this is discrimination. How did it feel to you? So I appreciate that. Yeah. Yes, growth is at least twofold. I'm learning that now. We can't make an effective plan if we are unhealed. Thank you for this. Yeah, healing is such an essential part of liberation, right? It is, because all the things that we experienced that we had to liberate ourselves from, that's right, to make a plan to liberate yourself. The thing that you were in was likely traumatic. And so part of your liberation strategy after you exit, after you leave, how do you begin to process, heal, put the pieces of yourself, right, back together, rebuild your self-confidence after that experience? That has to be part of it, which is why we're tackling both right at the summit. How do you make your income plan? How do you make your investment plan, right? How do you revise your resume? And then how do you, right, reignite your creativity to heal, which Alicia Bernice will be covering on Saturday, May 2nd, right? How do you, the session I'll be doing on Sunday, May 3rd, how do you have different healing strategies to feel safe within your body again if you've been exposed to harm, trauma, mistreatment, right, as a Black woman at work? How do you then recognize your body as this is a safe place for me to return to? That's not always an easy process, right? And so a liberation strategy, there has to be a healing component, processing what you experienced, why you had to liberate yourself in the first place. Thank you for that. What's worse is when others gang up and operate, yes, as flying monkeys to make the work environment hostile for their target. Yes. So in a narcissistic system, right, you have what's called the flying monkeys, the people who go around, as I understand it, trying to get closer to the person who's causing harm, trying to undermine what you're doing, maybe talk behind your back, maybe pretend that they're on your side and then fly back to the person who's causing harm to tell them what you shared with them, which is why it's so important to really vet the people who you share information with. As we said, like, this is strategic planning, and some of the things that we covered today, right? The level of cruelty that we're experiencing, psychological harm. It has to be met, like, this planning process with that level of strategy. Yeah, because what we're up against is no joke, right? And it's getting even more intense. As systems start to wobble, right, their grip starts to get even tighter, as we're seeing. And so it's really essential, again, during these times, to be in a place where you feel safe, to gather information, to make your strategy on your timeline, to be able to realize that options do exist for you. The narrative that we just have to stay in traumatic environments, compromising our health, our well-being, right? The ripple effect. So this doesn't just impact us, it impacts our family system, our communities when we're being harmed, right? The narrative that we should just accept that. So many of us are pushing back against that. No, right? Providing options, providing real, practical problem solving solutions, understanding that everyone's plan is going to look different because everyone has a different life, right? Different circumstances, different phase of life that we're in. And we really always want to impart that this summit is for all Black women. Understanding how intersectionality may impact some of our experiences, right? The information that may be relevant to us. Hello, good to see you. Samry Bliss, good afternoon. Yes. Sorry, I'm behind on comments. Oh, I see Sandra, one of our speakers. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Ageism is what happened to me. I was an older teacher making way too much money, had a target on my back. I just, had to pivot. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you. Ageism, right? Part of, as we were just talking about, intersectional experiences, which is so important to say. Right? And so, and even like recalling the power wheel. So we're experiencing discrimination, right? Based on race, based on gender. What about all the other identities that we hold? And so the oppression keeps stacking up. And so it's important to say that. Yes. And Sandra will be leading she'll be a part of a panel discussion on investment and retirement planning Sunday, May 3rd of the summit. If you're interested in learning more about investing, she has an incredible platform called From Lack to Legacy, and a YouTube channel, From Lack to Legacy. And she'll also be doing a bonus session if you're interested in learning the basics of investing to build your life of freedom, whatever that looks like for you. Through the premium pass. That is her bonus session. But she'll also be on a panel discussion at the regular summit May 3rd. So I'm excited about that, right? All these different topics that we are covering, again, that are going to be relevant to some, maybe irrelevant to others based on the situation that you're in, based on the stage of life that you're in. But knowing that every session is meant to provide you with information that you can use on your individual plan, right? So maybe not even at this time, maybe you need it, right, in the future, but to know that it's there for you. And to say that the standard pass, you do get 1 week of replays to the summit. In the premium pass, you get a full year. So if you do need additional time to sit with the information, to process, if you are highly sensitive like me, I need time to kind of like take a break from the information after a summit and then return to it. And so that might be beneficial to purchase the premium pass in that case. And if you would like to sponsor a Black woman to attend the summit, you can reach out to us as well. We have, let's see, I think we have 4 people who have reached out to us so far. So thank you so much. That is the email address. support@liftingasweclimbconsulting.com. If you are interested in sponsoring another Black woman to attend the summit, reach out to us there, please. Yeah, if you do too well, then people will think you don't need help. Yet if you don't do well enough, they'll get rid of you. Thank you for this. Yep. Yeah, so it's confusing. It's deliberately, intentionally confusing because disorientation is the goal. And I have to give thanks to Glenn Mazzini, Rushni Cope, who talks about this all the time. Disorientation is the goal. They want you disoriented, right? Do this. No, I'm going to raise the bar here. Now go this way, right? And it can be the opposite of what we're initially told to do. So you're expending your precious time, sacred energy, trying to follow this thing, right? It kind of reminds me of it's a cruel, like twisted game that's being played. And even recognizing that, right? And so it's not you that you were doing what they told you to do this time, but the next day it switched up to something different. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And y'all, I just did a session on this for sensitive folks being entrepreneurs, selling. It takes a lot. So thank you for this. I appreciate that. Yes. Sign me up for what you're selling. I can relate after getting my master's. Yes. Yes. I wasn't prepared for that. I was not prepared. Because the message is just get your degree, right? Which I did. Okay, get the next degree, which I did. Not, okay, now the target on your back is going to grow even bigger. And the system's going to try to push you out because someone's going to inevitably be triggered, right? By all this education that you've been gaining, all this knowledge that you've been pouring into your career, right? The expertise that you've been building. That part was left out. And so, again, I'm glad that a lot of us are sharing our experiences so that we can see, right, the pattern that exists. And that it's not, again, it's not a personal issue. It's a structural, systemic issue that we can now see a pattern to, which is from pet to threat. We see it, right? Thanks to, again, the work of the incredible Dr. Kecia Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps, Dr. Juanita Johnson-Bailey, who will be kicking off the summit, which we're so grateful for, with their panel discussion. From pet to threat, right? Explaining, understanding why this happens to so many of us at work. So that will be the kickoff event of the summit, which we're very excited about. And then if you do need a reset before you get into the information of the Saturday and Sunday, because those are full days, very full days, there is a sound bowl session on the Friday evening by Dr. Danette King for our collective restoration, right? We're going through so much. Feels like something new every day, right? That's traumatic, that's infuriating, that we're witnessing. And so how can we take just a pause to center ourselves, to bring peace to our systems before we get into the information, before we get into the strategy, activating the parts of our brains, right? Through breath work, through sound, the power of sound, to be able to then process the information that's going to be provided to us. So yeah, so many amazing sessions. I kind of want to pull up I might do that at the end. I still got a few notes, so thank y'all so much for commenting in the chat. I do appreciate it. Let me get to, right, so recognizing some of the signs, right, that may be helpful when praise suddenly turns into silence, when your contributions start being questioned, right, people start to poke holes in your work. Informal support disappears, so the people that you used to be able to lean on and ask questions to, now all of a sudden they switched up too, right? They don't want to share information with you. They don't want to talk to you. It's an entire system at play, right? And as we've talked about, this is very intentional. It's an attempt often to break us psychologically, which is the power of community, right? We can tell each other, it's not you, right? This is something to be prepared for. What you've labeled, it's something I've heard both Rushni of Glamazzini on YouTube and Colette, one of our speakers, Colette Elizabeth on YouTube, share, right? You can then label it. This is step 3 of this pattern versus it being you internalizing it as something is wrong with you. Like, oh, no, nothing's wrong with me. This is just step 3 of the from pet to threat pattern that I should come to expect as I'm gaining this education and expertise. Do you see how that kind of alleviates some of the things that we might internalize by having a term for it, by having the research behind it? Right? So small mistakes can be amplified. Excuse me, you're excluded from conversations you used to be a part of. Being left off of meetings, right? Recognizing the pattern helps us stop internalizing it. When we internalize things, that affects our self-confidence, our perception of ourselves, which is the goal, right? So anything that you can do to resist internalizing, that is resisting systems of oppression. You're refusing to let it enter, right? Your being, your mind. You're creating that barrier, right? That net. Before it gets through to my being, I have to vet this. Is this true? Or is this step 4 of the from pet to threat pattern that 3 Black women researchers have already identified? Right? That's where your agency comes in. That's where you're able to lean into your power. Right? And so protecting yourself when the shift happens, it can be important to document your work, your contributions, your interactions with people, saving this not on your work device, right? On a personal device, maintaining professional boundaries. Oh, I can do a whole topic on this too, right? Because I need to talk more about this. When Black women establish boundaries at work, because we're told like that's the solution presented to us so often. You just need to establish boundaries. Well, what happens when we establish boundaries? Right? Sometimes the treatment gets even worse, right? Here come you're being difficult, you're making people feel uncomfortable, you're not being a team player. So that just can't be just a blanket solution that's given to us, right? Just set boundaries. Being prepared for the terms that might come, and we do set boundaries to protect ourselves. Protecting yourself could be building support networks outside of the organization. So as we talked about, sometimes people may turn against you within the organization. Do you have people outside that are trusted, that you can turn to, that you can confide in, that can help you plan, that can pour back into you, right? That's the purpose of the summit too. To begin to establish that network outside of the organization that you can turn to, right, to reality check. Is this really, am I imagining this, or is this really happening? Having someone reflect back to you, no, that happened to me too, right? That's step 2 of the from pet to threat pattern, right? Being able to reflect back to each other that's not us, right? Start thinking strategically. It's so important about your options and your mobility, your freedom to choose, right? The direction that you want to go in once you start to recognize these things. And it can be helpful to avoid, as someone who has done this, right, pouring your energy into try to fix the systemic issues that you're experiencing, right? And understanding that this is not a personal issue. This is a systemic, structural issue that's impacting us, right? Sometimes the win is protecting your well-being, right? I think that's always a win, really. Protecting your well-being, protecting your psyche, expanding your choices, giving yourself options, and acknowledging that you have the agency to pivot on your timeline, right? Because it's different for everyone. But the goal is to give you information, right? So that you know that you have choices. I think that can be part of the downward spiral too. That was the case for me when it felt like I didn't have anything other than this. And so pushing back against that idea, right? With 28 Black women thought leaders sharing with you, here's an option, here's an option, here's an option. Now you have a menu of options that you can utilize to plan your strategy in a way that works for you, which is, again, individual. And so let me get to the comments. Thank y'all so much for being here. I haven't been live by myself in a while, so I appreciate y'all. Thank you. Edna B. Lurking says, remote work allowed me to catch up to whereabouts society says I should be. Remote work. I know that there are studies on this, and this gives me an idea to look this up after this live, but the benefits of remote work for Black women in particular, when we don't have to go into the office every day, right, and experience these aggressive behaviors, right, on top of trying to do our job. When we can be in peace, right? And this just brings to mind, like, when you have that level of calm, peace within your body, what happens to your brain is your prefrontal cortex, right, is able to come back online. You're able to process information much more deeply. You're able to strategize without the trauma constantly of experiencing someone making a remark, right? That's probably covert. And so it's not like something that you can report, but it's something that you feel, right? Just the benefits of remote work. Yes. Thank you for that. Intersectionality is real. Yes. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yeah, the covert and fear of being outnumbered or understaffed creates weaker leadership too, because often employers in power will choose diplomacy as opposed to right from wrong. They use the majority rules. Yes. Yes, thank you. Ooh. Celeste. Yes. Celeste is, again, one of our incredible speakers at the summit on Saturday, May 2nd, talking about contract work. How do you find contract roles if you are experiencing a layoff, if you are in a toxic work environment and you're looking for more flexibility? How do you even begin that process? That is what Celeste will be covering at the summit. But it's true. It's true. Again, the power dynamics that exist. You need someone to try to control, right? That gets very deep, right? But that's a lot of people's identity. If I don't have anyone to lord over, right, who am I? Where is my power coming from? Right? If I can't tell anyone what to do or restrict their movement. And that's what we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. They didn't, thank you. Thank you for being here. They didn't appreciate me until I finally made the decision to leave. Now they're scrambling, and I can feel the resentment that I'm not going to be there to fix their problems anymore. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you so much for sharing this. And we've heard this, right? When we implement our exit strategy on our timeline, people start to realize, oh, I actually really needed her labor. Maybe I shouldn't have mistreated her, right? Or put multiple roles onto her, right? Underpaid her. Right? And it's a reckoning, right? Because it's our labor so often that upholds so many, right, of these structures, these systems. And yet we're told that our labor is worth nothing. Both things can't be true, right? Either our labor is worth nothing, or our labor is so powerful, so needed that it upholds all of these things. And so that when we begin to take it for ourselves, things start to crumble, right? People start to get irritated. Here come the labels. I've talked about this before, right? Now you're selfish because I can't use your labor anymore. And I was used to it, right? I became entitled to your labor. Asking the question, like, what happens when we take it back for ourselves? Because this entire time you've been trying to convince us that it's worth nothing. And so, yeah. Yeah, I'm just going to scroll through these comments. Thank y'all so much. Yes. Hold up, Celeste. Are you down to go live together? Because I will send you an email. I'm writing that down. Yes, because these conversations need to be had, especially during these times, the things that we're experiencing. Yes. She had no problem with the docile Black women who kept their heads down, but the ones who were shining. Yeah. Yeah. And as you start to see the roots, the basis of this, I think is so important. Which is why I've had to go back, right, and read the narratives of people who were enslaved to understand the dynamics of a plantation system. What happened when someone, right, stood out? What happened when someone was brilliant, right, and was an expert in their trade, right? It infuriates people. It irritates people. I think it confuses people still, right? That I've taken all of this from you over centuries and you're still shining. How is that possible? Right? You're still brilliant. You're still able to achieve this after centuries of trauma that I've subjected you to. How is that possible? Right? It really, there's a lot of words for it, right? It confuses, irritates, infuriates. Yeah, makes people fearful. A lot of things are coming up. Yep. Yep. I'm Black and have been bullied from all angles, Black and non-Black women of all ethnicities. It can get lonely, but my faith keeps me strong. First, I want to say I'm I'm sorry that you experienced this. Bullying. Ooh. Yes. Yes. And to say that your faith keeps you strong. I appreciate you sharing this. I know that a lot of us can relate to this, of being bullied really throughout our lives. And unfortunately, like workplace bullying often like brings us back to childhood bullying. And it can feel like those similar sensations. I can't leave this environment, right? Because we couldn't leave school, right? And just to recognize within the society that is structured like this, right? Where bullies often are the higher power level, right? Other people will try to emulate those behaviors and it upkeeps the systems that we're in. Yeah. And so I'm so sorry that that's happened to you. Jamila says that part, Marissa, read the email several times and make sure you use the softest language possible so that no one's offended. Yes. Whew. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. Yes. And I do want to shout out, I do have merch on that I designed for the summit. So if you're interested in that, that's on the webpage as well. But yes, the email reading over and over again. Whew. It's exhausting. All these behaviors, right, that are trying to protect us within these environments that are draining our energy, draining our creativity, which is why I'm so excited for Alicia's session, right? Reigniting your creativity after harm. How do you return to all these things that brought you joy if you've shut them off to survive the toxic environment? Knowing that they're still there, they're still within you, all these gifts that you've had to suppress, how do you turn them back on to aid in your healing, right? Your self-discovery, your confidence rebuilding. That's essential too. Yeah. Oh, I saw a question. Let me get to that real quick. Yes, we do have a limited number of sponsored tickets. If you would like to sponsor another Black woman to attend, you can reach out to us, support@liftingasweclimbconsulting.com. And you can also email this box too if you are in need of sponsorship. We have a limited number of sponsored tickets for the summit, but that is the email address. Yes, y'all. Okay, I think that's all my notes. I've been live for quite a while now. As an introvert, I don't know how that happened, but here we are. Thank y'all so much for joining. If you have experienced the from pet to threat phenomenon, again, coined by 3 Black women researchers, Dr. Kecia Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps, Dr. Juanita Johnson-Bailey. I'm sorry that that happened to you, right? That happened to me too. I had no idea what I was experiencing. It led to some other things that I had to grapple with, namely depression, right? A depression diagnosis, and now being able to understand what was happening to me, right? In that environment, that it was my brilliance, that it was my light, and now being able to return to that, right? 3 years later, it is possible. And the journey is a winding one, right? Again, healing is not linear. I think Alex L said that. Healing is not linear. Right. And so giving yourself grace, compassion, time, I think is important to understand, right? That the problem was never you. As we went over today, it's systemic, it's structural. It has happened to so many of us globally. This is a global issue, unfortunately, that Black women are experiencing. And yeah, if you're interested in learning more about the research behind the term, I do have a link here. Check out this link. Right? I don't know how that happened. Almost like 2 hours in. I don't know. I don't know. But I appreciate y'all sticking with me if you're here with me live. If you're watching the replay, thank you so much for watching. Here is more on the research. It's also linked in the description section. Celeste. And when they're unable to process our success, then it must be DEI, which is just another way for them to take credit for whatever we achieve. Oof. That's it. Thank you. Yes. And again, if you're not registered for the third annual 2026 Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black Women, the theme being this year, Preparation is Power, bringing together 28 Black women thought leaders for what will be a life-changing event. Every year it's life-changing, but I feel like this year in particular, given what we're experiencing, collectively, the information that will be shared, the strategy, right, the practical guidance, the healing resources, there's really something for everyone. And we wanted that to be the case, right? Because everyone's planning journey, liberation journey, strategy, planning session is going to be different based on your life experiences, based on your circumstances, based on your what phase of life that you're in. But to know that the information is there for you and you do not have to do this alone. If you're looking for more options to generate income, right? To revise your resume. We have Charnay Horton coming in from the Resume Addict to talk about how you do that. If that is the barrier, right, between you and your plan, that will be solved at the summit with Charnay's session. There are so many sessions like that. Building multiple income streams online, which Krishan Wright will be speaking about Sunday, May 3rd. Yeah, just so many. Adelia Borshade's opening session Sunday, May 3rd. Know your numbers before you pivot. If you're someone who really likes to have your numbers in place before you make a decision, she'll be walking through how to do that. We never want to say that you need to just immediately leave a job unless you're being harmed to the point where you are experiencing severe, right, mental health issues. In that case, please leave. But we're trying to create a safe, informative space to give you time to gather the information, right, which will be at the summit, and then make your plan, right? Once you have that information, once you have that guidance, once you feel that you have the proof, right, that it can be done, which we will be providing you as well. Trying to think of anything else. So many amazing sessions. Please check out the landing page if you're interested in seeing, learning more about our speakers, seeing the different sessions that will be taking place all online, May 1st through the 3rd. Early bird pricing ends March 31st, and then it transitions to standard pricing. So yes, I think that's it, y'all. Appreciate y'all watching. You are welcome. Thank you. And to be lurking, thank you for being here. And yes, the link to register for the summit is in the description section. Trying to think, am I going to be going live again later this week? I don't know yet, but please check out my YouTube channel if I do. And if not, I hope y'all have a great rest of your evening. Please comment below if anything resonated with you during this talk. If you have experienced going from pet to threat, and you're healing, you're recovering, you're processing, and you feel comfortable sharing in the comments, please feel free to do so as we learn from each other in community. And just know that the issue is not you. We are, in fact, facing multiple intersecting systems of oppression, right, that are trying to keep us in place. And when our light shines, when our brilliance inevitably comes out, right, people will try to keep us back into our place, right, suppress us back to the place that they created for us. And part of healing and reclamation is leaning into your agency, right, to realize that, oh, no, I can make a strategy out of this. I don't just have to take this, right? I don't just have to suffer. I can build a life that actually centers my joy, centers my well-being, and That is the purpose of the summit, to show you that it is possible, practical guidance, income strategy, healing guidance. It is a trauma-informed space. So again, no attendees will be on camera. You'll also have the option to change your name within the platform of Hey Summit. If you want to attend completely anonymously, that is your right to do so. We know that surveillance in these work environments is on overdrive these days. So that is in place too. And yeah, we hope that you'll join us for this third annual 2026 summit. The other summits are linked on the landing page as well if you want to check out what they look like in the years prior. And the merch is also linked on the summit site if you want to check that out too. I don't know if y'all can see this. I have the water bottle too. Liberate yourself. So that just stays on my desk as I'm doing this work to motivate me. So, oh no, you're fine. The replay will be available. Thank you for being here. No worries at all. Oh, thank you. This was a word. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Price. You are welcome, Celeste. You are very welcome. Again, if you're interested in learning more about contract roles, how do you find them? To have more flexibility in your work schedule, if you're experiencing layoff, that will be Celeste's session that she will be leading Saturday, May 2nd at the summit, which I'm excited about. But thank you for this. Right? I can't believe it's already 3 years. You guys have done such a wonderful job. Thank you for this. Thank you. It's a lot of work. It's so much work, but it's so necessary. And to see the impact that we've been able to have over the past 3 years with the feedback that we've received, it serves as fuel, right? To keep going, to realize that a lot of people are being positively impacted by the information that we're sharing by our speakers, incredible speakers. So I appreciate this feedback. Okay, y'all, on that note, I will see you back here maybe later this week, maybe next week for another topic. And yeah, thank y'all so much for joining. Appreciate you. Bye.